He had it all: wealth, power, a luxurious life in Manhattan. But one quiet dinner, a spoonful of soup nearly became his last, until a 12-year-old homeless boy shattered the silence and exposed a chilling truth. This isn't just a tale of betrayal, it's about courage, conscience, and the moment one voice changed everything. What if the richest man in the room owed his life not to security or status, but to a street-smart child with nothing to lose? This story will shake you, break you, and remind you that true strength often wears rags, not a suit. The billionaire would not have listened if he had not seen it himself at an exquisite dinner in an expensive Manhattan cafe. Something happens that will forever change the lives of three people in an atmosphere of wealth and external well-being. There is treachery, but the truth will find its defender from where no one expected. In the Café Billionaire, everything was as always impeccable on the marble tables. Crystal glasses gleamed, between which shadows played from the warm, diffused light. The waiters glided silently as if moving along the stage outside the windows. The evening Manhattan was noisy, but here inside it penetrated only as a muffled echo of someone else's less refined life. Bernard Chambers sat at his favorite table by the window. He was 72 and he looked as it was customary to look for people of his circle in an expensive suit, perfectly ironed with gold cufflinks and an antique watch on his wrist. He ate slowly with dignity inherent to those who no longer proved anything to themselves or others. Next to him sat Marissa, his wife, 40 years younger. Well-built, well-groomed, with impeccable makeup and perfect hairdo, she looked with slight half-bow at the soup that the waiter had placed in front of her. Her movements were neat, almost theatrical. Occasionally she glanced at Bernardo, loving, caring, a little thoughtful. Have you tried their signature tomato soup today? She asked, pushing a plate towards him. No, I'm not hungry, answered Bernard, leaning back in his chair. But maybe a little later. He again plunged into reading the notification on his phone. For a few seconds Marissa simply sat, looking in his direction, then quickly and deftly poured the contents of a small capsule into the soup. The movement took less than a second. She used the moment when the waiter turned away and Bernard looked at his phone. She stirred it lightly with a spoon and not a single muscle moved on her face. Nobody noticed it. Almost no one on the street. In front of the window stood a boy of about 12. He pressed his forehead to the glass, trying not to attract attention. Eyes his were wide open. He did not know the name of the dish that stood in front of the woman, did not know who these people were, but he saw her pouring something and it was not a spice. The boy's name was Malik. He had been living on the streets of Manhattan for almost a year. He did not care about politics, fashion, or business. He knew the smells of food when he had not eaten for a long time. He knew what dangerous people looked like and he could read gestures, faces, eyes. Survival taught. Malik moved away from the window, as if under the influence of force. He stood in indecision what he could do in this cafe. They would not let him even on the threshold. He had already tried more than once to get into restaurants for leftovers, for warm. Usually they kicked him out, sometimes beat him once. They called the police, but at that moment something inside him became louder than fear. He returned to the door, pushed it, went inside. The silence was deafening. He knew that he looked alien. Torn sweatshirt, dirty sneakers, face that had not been touched for a long time. Water in the cafe. Everyone turned around. The waiter instantly moved towards him. Hey, you can't be here, he began. Malik didn't pay attention. He walked towards Bernard's table until he was intercepted by the hand. Please, mister, don't eat this. He shouted, "Your wife put something in the soup." The world stopped for a second. Malik's voice sounded sharply loud, desperately. "What did you say?" Bernard turned around. Frowning, Marissa laughed. The laughter was strained. Ostentatious. "Oh my God, what nonsense. Who even let this child in? He's some kind of homeless guy. He's probably on drugs. Look at him." I saw her pour something into the soup, Malik insisted. She had a small capsule. The waiter was still holding the boy's hand, already calling the visitors. To the administrator began whispering. Several people took out their phones. Someone was filming. Bernard put the phone down and looked carefully at Marissa. She felt his gaze immediately. Her face changed. She didn't look scared, rather irritated. "Bernard, this is absurd. The boy obviously wants to attract attention or money. Don't you dare listen to him." Bernard silently looked at the plate with soup, then back at Marissa, and suddenly said to the waiter, "Please bring new soup from the same batch and call security, but let no one do it yet." "No. It's not him who's leaving." He nodded at Malik. "No. My wife." Marissa turned pale. Malik stood motionless, but inside him everything was shaking. He didn't know if he had saved someone or ruined his life and the lives of others, but he knew that he had done the right thing. Ahead there was supposed to be a long night. When the security came in, a heavy silence reigned in the hall. The people at the neighboring tables froze, not knowing how to react. Someone still thought it was a misunderstanding, someone that something serious was starting. The manager of the establishment nervously discussed with the waiter how to proceed further. Bernard sat silently. He carefully examined Malik. The boy was breathing heavily but trying to hold himself straight. He didn't try to run away, didn't look away. "Look, what's your name?" calmly asked Bernard. "Malik, sir." "Where do you live?" "Now, nowhere. Sometimes in a shelter, sometimes on the street." Marissa sighed with irritation. "This is already a farce. Bernard, are you really going to listen to a homeless boy who probably just wants to get on video and be famous or get compensation? It's obvious." Bernard slowly turned to her. "Why are you so sure of his motives?" Marissa tensed. "Because I'm not an idiot. He just accused me of attempted murder. Do you hear what he's saying?" "I hear, and I hear how you're trying to distract attention from the essence." He turned to the waiter. "Where is that soup my wife offered me?" "It's still on the table, sir. We didn't clean up." "Okay, I want it checked. Call someone." "The police, sanitary service, I don't know who, but I want the result, and I want all of this to be recorded. Up to this point no one has left." Marissa jumped up. "You can't be serious." "I'm very serious." Restaurant staff amazed by this turn of events. Someone nevertheless obeyed. Already called the police. Malik was still standing between the guard and Bernard. For the first time, he felt that an adult was hearing him. It was strange and scary. "What exactly did you see?" Malik asked Bernard without raising his voice. "I was standing behind the window. I often stand there. Sometimes waiters take out leftovers. I saw your wife take something out of her coat. It was a small capsule. She quickly poured it into the soup while you were looking at your phone, then stirred it with a spoon. It was fast, but I definitely saw. I know when someone does something they shouldn't, and you decided to burst in and tell me about it." "Yes." "Why did?" Malik fall silent for a second, then looked straight at Bernard. "Because I don't know who you are, but no one deserves to be poisoned, even if you are rich, even if you are married to a beautiful woman." At that moment one of the guests in the hall clapped awkwardly, quietly but sincerely. The others exchanged glances, Marissa feeling how control was slipping away sat back in. Pursed her lips. He is lying, children of the street always lie, perhaps, said Bernard, but perhaps he is the only one here who tells the truth. Through 15 minutes later the first police officers arrived, followed by the officers of the Food Quality Control Department. The soup was carefully sealed and sent for express analysis. Everything that was happening was recorded on the cameras of the restaurant and the guests' phones. Marissa tried to maintain her composure, but the tension in her face was becoming more and more noticeable. One of the police officers began to question the witnesses. Another one was talking to Bernard. He explained the situation calmly and precisely, asked that the boy be treated correctly. Malik was sitting to the side. They gave him a glass of water. He did not know what would happen next. He did not expect to be heard, but now everything had become real. We will check the soup, said one of the police officers, but if there is nothing there, you understand that this will be considered a false accusation. For the boy this could turn into problems. Bernard nodded. If there is nothing there, I will personally help Malik, but if he is right, you must act. An hour later the preliminary results came. There really was a substance in the soup containing destinies, a drug that in high doses can cause cardiac arrest, available only by prescription. The pause that hung after this information seemed like an eternity. The officer turned to Marissa. Mrs. Chambers, please stand up. You are under arrest on suspicion of attempted murder. This is a mistake. I don't know how it got there. Someone set me up, she screamed, but her voice was shaking. One of the policemen put on handcuffs. The people in the hall were silent. Someone was filming. Someone just watched in amazement. Marissa, still protesting, was led out of the cafe. Bernard remained sitting. He didn't eat, didn't speak, just looked at the empty plate of soup in front of him, an overturned fork, behind which there remained one strange detail until tonight. He considered this evening perfect, and in the corner sat a 12-year-old boy who had changed his life after Marissa was taken away. The cafe gradually emptied. The visitors left, discussing what had happened in a low voice. Someone expressed sympathy for Bernard. Someone expressed bewilderment. Someone still doubted that this was not some kind of production in our time. They say, everything is possible, maybe advertising, maybe a PR stunt. But no one finished the soup. Bernard remained at his table. He asked the staff not to close the cafe. Malik was sitting one table away from him, still a little tense, clutching a glass of water in his hands as if it could save him from everything. What was happening? Bernard finally turned to him. Thank you for saying. Malik nodded. It was hard for him to talk. He didn't know that now they could accuse him of anything. But on the other hand, everything could end up much worse. Do you often come around here? Asked Bernard, looking at the boy closely but without hostility. Sometimes at Bella. You're good leftovers. Some waiters throw food if not too busy. Evening. I don't ask, just wait outside. Not always lucky. Where do you sleep? There is one basement a block from here, boarded up door. Sometimes I spend the night in a shelter, but everything there is complicated. There are fights, thefts. I'm better alone. Bernard was silent. In his eyes there was not pity but something else, something like growing interest mixed with regret. He himself grew up in a poor family. Even though not on the street, he knew how hard it is to escape from a hole if no one lends your hand. How much? You are 12 years old and you have no parents. Mom died. I don't know dad. Foster homes are worse than the street. I tried. Malik spoke dryly without much emotion, not because he was indifferent, but because he was already used to explaining everything briefly to anyone. After all, it's not interesting to listen to long stories from people like him. Why didn't you run away? Bernard suddenly asked. You knew that you could get into trouble. Yes, but if I had kept quiet and you had died, it would have been worse. Bernard looked at him for a long time, then looked away and took out A platinum business card from his wallet. Do you know who I am? Malik shrugged. No, my name is Bernard Chambers. I am the founder and owner of the development company Chambers Development Group. We build housing, offices, schools and finance some programs to help young people. I don't know if you've come across this name. I don't read such things. Only newspapers from garbage containers. They don't write about businessmen. They're Bernard smiled slightly. Right, do you want me to order you dinner? Malik slightly shrugged his shoulders as if he was hesitating, but then still. Bernard nodded, waved to the waiter, and he brought the boy a warm sandwich and French fries. Malik ate carefully, not like an animal but like someone who hasn't eaten for a long time. Nothing normal, but doesn't want to look greedy. He ate with dignity. You have a keen-eyed. Bernard noticed, watching the boy carefully wrap the other half of the sandwich in a napkin so that he could take it with him later. He learned on the street you need to look around. He noticed the capsule by its color. It was different from regular sugar or salt. Your wife is beautiful but nervous. Her hand shook. People who do something bad almost always make one extra mistake. Bernard nodded. The boy's words were surprisingly accurate, and perhaps he knew the truth deeper than it seemed. Why did you decide that she could not be trusted? Malik was silent for a long time. She had a face like one person I knew before. That person once hit me, but before that he also smiled. Bernard looked away. He saw Marissa again, all her smiles, gestures, touches, and realized how much he ignored small reasons for anxiety, strange calls, frequent excuses, irritation over trifles. He did not want to believe that she was capable of meanness, but the fact was a fact. You are afraid that she will come back? He asked quietly. Malik shrugged. Maybe, but if she comes back, I think you will already be ready. Bernard grinned, then stood up. Let's go, I'll take you, but not to the police. Don't be afraid. I just want to know where you live. Maybe I can do something. Malik froze. He did not know whether he could trust, but today he had already taken a risk once and made the right choice. He nodded. Bernard paid. On the way out he lingered for a second, glancing at the empty table, soup, and remained untouched. The world in which he lived no longer seemed so cozy, but somewhere in its shadow stood a boy who was not afraid to tell the truth, and perhaps it meant more than all the luxury and status. The police had already begun to sort out the details. The initial analysis of the soup gave an alarming result, and the case quickly passed to the district attorney's office. Questions there were many. In little time the presence of journalists leaked on social networks, videos. All this heated up the situation. The story of a rich man poisoned by his own young wife looked like a script for a crime thriller, but it was not fiction. Bernard Chambers sat in his office on the 5th floor of the headquarters of Chambers Development Group, looking out the window at Spring, New York. Yesterday he almost became a victim. Today he found himself in the center of attention, but that was not what worried him most. Most of all, he thought about how many times in the last months he had seen alarming signals and did not attach importance to them. You definitely should give official comments only with a lawyer, said the assistant, entering with a tablet in his hands. The press is on edge. Your shares are still holding, but the pressure will only grow. Bernard nodded. He understood. His name was a reliable and respected brand, and now this name was on all the headlines, but already with a different subtext. Where is the boy now? He asked, without taking his eyes off the window. We found temporary accommodation for him. A private center, not a shelter. It's safe there. Decent conditions. We provided security. While the investigation is ongoing,
it's good, I want to talk to him tonight. Meanwhile, at the police station, Marissa was sitting in the interrogation room without makeup, in a gray sweatshirt. She seemed younger and, at the same time, older. She was not scared. She looked rather irritated. Her lawyer was pacing from corner to corner. This is nonsense, all this absurdity, he kept saying. They have no direct evidence except that the boy allegedly saw something. He is a homeless minor. Besides, they cannot prove what exactly. Did you add the substance to the cameras? Asked Marissa, looking at one point. Unfortunately, the camera above your table did not work. For some reason, perhaps a malfunction. This will play into our hands, but the analysis of the soup is a problem. She was silent for a moment. I just wanted to leave gracefully, she suddenly said. Without divorces, without a deal, without a trial, he would have signed a power of attorney anyway. He is already old. A month or two and no one would have suspected. Not a child, but a lawyer froze you just now, admitted Marissa. She grinned. Didn't you say they had no direct evidence? By evening, Bernard arrived at the center where Malik was temporarily located. It was a small house in the suburbs converted into a charitable shelter. It was quiet, clean, smelled of food and warm wood. The boy was sitting in the common room, looking at a board game but not playing. Great, you held up yesterday, said Bernard, sitting down next to him. I haven't forgotten my promise. Malik nodded slightly. He still didn't know whether to believe. Do you have a dream? Suddenly asked Bernard. Yes, the boy said quietly. Just to sleep at night without thinking where to hide, just to have your own toothbrush and know that tomorrow there will be food. Bernard nodded slowly with pain inside. You will have all this if you don't mind. I would like to formalize guardianship, not right away, of course, through official procedures, but if you don't mind, I will help you get education, housing, and normal life. Malik was silent and then suddenly asked, and why? Do you believe me? Bernard looked straight ahead. Because I didn't believe myself and you believed it, did the right thing despite everything, and this means that you have something that is hard to buy: conscience, courage, and a rare sense of the moment when you need to not be silent. He got up. I'll leave you my business card tomorrow. A social worker will come. Everything will be officially, but the main thing is you are no longer alone. Malik. Bernard headed for the exit, and Malik, at that moment, for the first time in a long time, smiled for real, without fear, without a protective mask. In 2 days, Marissa, an official charge was brought. Her lawyers tried to lower the temperature, but in the case there was already too much attention, evidence, and resonance. Attempted murder with the use of poison is a serious article even for people with good connections. And Bernard, he appeared on the covers not as a victim but as a person who survived betrayal and chose trust. In one of his interviews he said a phrase which was spread across all the newspapers: a boy from the street saved me. This does not speak of my vulnerability but of his strength, and as long as there are such children in the world, we have a chance. A month has passed. Spring has finally come into its right. Streets New York blossomed with pinkish white trees. Coffee shops put out tables on the sidewalks, and passers-by again began to smile more often than hide in their collars. The city, as always, moved on even after the loudest scandals. It was able to forget, not out of indifference but out of eternal haste. But some remained. The name of Bernard Chambers did not leave the headlines. The story of poisoning, sensations, revelations, interrogations, court hearings, all this still excited the news channels and the morning show, but attention to one detail did not subside, especially for a long time. To
A boy named Malik who saved the life of a millionaire in his spacious but cozy living room of a townhouse in Brooklyn. It smelled of cookies and fresh coffee. Malik sat at the dining table and did his homework. He was wearing a new sweatshirt and clean jeans. On the table lay a tablet with digital textbooks, and next to him is a cup of hot cocoa. "How are you doing with math?" Bernard asked, entering the room with a warm bun in his hands. "Better than yesterday." Malik chuckled. "I got it. Fractions are almost like a street deal. Only more honest." Bernard laughed. In a month they became closer, not like father and son. It's too early to talk about it, but definitely closer than just an adult and a rescued child. Malik no longer shied away from touches, did not turn around at every noise. He got used to the silence, to his own closet, to evening conversations. Guardianship was issued temporarily, but Bernard had already filed documents for permanent. None of the authorities objected. Everyone knew how it all began, and were glad to see how it all continues. "You knew, right, that I might not believe it?" Bernard once asked on one of those quiet nights when they watched together old movies. "Yes," Malik answered then. "But if you had eaten the soup, there would have been no one to believe it." The trial of Marissa was going on. The defense was trying to use unstable psycho-emotional states, sought a medical examination, hinted at pressure and stress. But the charges were prepared harshly. Evidence of confession, traces of the drug in her things, financial documents where she secretly transferred money to unknown accounts. All this added up to a rather simple, albeit bitter picture. Bernard did not attend every hearing. He hired good lawyers and decided not to waste nerves. He had already experienced betrayal. He did not want to repeat it. His attention was focused on Malik. One of the evenings they returned home later than usual after an excursion to the Museum of Natural History. Malik for the first time held binoculars in his hands and could not tear himself away from the dinosaur model. "You wanted to become an archaeologist, right?" Bernard reminded him when the boy enthusiastically told that dinosaurs were like forgotten evidence from the past. "I wanted to end. Now maybe I can even," Malik quietly added, and there was something in his voice. New hope. They had dinner on the terrace under the light noise of the street and in the smells of fresh pizza that Malik himself helped to heat up. Bernard looked at him and thought how easy it would have been not to cross their paths. Everything was decided by one second, one action, one "don't be silent." "Remember you said that you wanted a toothbrush and to have a place to sleep?" asked Bernard, already closer to night. Malik nodded. "You now have more, but if you ever want to go back to your old life, I won't hold you back. Just know you have a home always." Malik didn't answer anything. He just came up and hugged him, for real, without fear, without protection. A little more time passed. Malik started studying at a private school. It turned out he grasps things faster than most of his peers. Teachers said that he has an analytical mind, and the curator from the guardianship department added, sometimes one adult is enough to change a child's fate. But Bernard knew the opposite. Sometimes one child is enough to remind adults who they should be. The story hit the news again, but in a different context. Bernard Chambers established the Malik Foundation to help children who ended up on the streets but did not lose their courage. The foundation's logo depicted the shadow of a boy standing at the door of a restaurant. Below the motto, "A real hero is one who speaks the truth even if the whole world is silent."